Imagine for a second that you've finally decided to step into the arena.
Mhm.
And I don't just mean running for president or something huge.
Right.
Maybe running for the local school board or, trying to become head of your labor union. You're ready for a fight. You've got your facts. You practiced your speeches. You're ready for someone to stand up and tell the world why your ideas are wrong.
That's the traditional view of conflict, isn't it?
It is. It's Rocky in the ring.
Yeah. The clean, symmetrical, civics class version. Two people, two ideas. May the best one win. But the material we are diving into today, the architecture of political shadows, it suggests that that version of warfare is, well, it's basically a fairy tale at this point.
Yeah, this deep dive is going to be a little darker than our usual stuff because the premise here is it's chilling. It argues that in modern politics, and really in modern life in general, the most dangerous enemy doesn't run against you.
They don't debate you.
They just watch you
Hmm.
quietly, anonymously. And by the time you even realize they're there, the game is already over.
And just to frame this for everyone listening, we aren't talking about one specific election or some, celebrity scandal you saw on X last week. We are looking at a tactic.
At a chat? Yeah.
We're dissecting how anonymity and these shadows are weaponized to completely dismantle a reputation without the attacker ever having to show their face.
It's the stuff that happens in the comment sections, the whisper networks, all those dark corners of the internet. And to help us navigate this, the material introduces us to a central figure, a case study named Daniel.
Right.
Now, Daniel isn't a specific famous person, is he?
No. Daniel is an archetype. He represents anyone who, disrupts the status quo. He's the guy who asks where the budget went. He's the woman who suggests a new way of doing things.
And what happens to him serves as a blueprint for this machinery of doubt.
A perfect blueprint.
Okay, so let's get into the mechanics. Let's say Daniel decides to run for that local office. He's clean, good ideas. How does a shadow attack actually begin? Because I think most of us imagine, like, a bombshell report.
A front page story.
Yeah, about embezzlement or a secret affair.
And that's what Daniel expects too. But the shadow architecture is much more subtle. It doesn't start with an explosion. It starts with what the text calls incubation.
Incubation.
It's almost always a vague accusation, or even better, a question framed as a concern.
Oh, I see this all the time. It's the classic, I'm just asking questions move.
Exactly. The material highlights a specific example, something like, has anyone looked into this guy?
Or something about him feels off.
Yeah, that's the one. Something about him feels off.
Which, hold on, I have to play devil's advocate here. Something about him feels off. That's weak. If I'm Daniel, why do I care? If there's no specific charge, why does that hurt me?
That is the intuitive reaction, but it's wrong. And this is where the psychology gets so fascinating. If I accuse you of, say, stealing a Honda Civic on Tuesday,
Okay.
you can produce a time-stamped photo of yourself at a coffee shop. You can disprove a fact, but you cannot disprove a vibe.
You can't debunk a feeling.
Precisely. And the vagueness is actually the weapon. When someone says something feels off, your brain, the listener's brain, it automatically fills in the gap with whatever you personally find most suspicious.
So the attacker outsources the narrative construction to the audience.
Yes. They aren't planting a specific lie, they're planting a seed of doubt and just letting the internet water it. It bypasses the logical part of your brain that asks for evidence and goes straight to the instinctual part that senses danger.
It's a heuristic of safety.
That's it. If a stranger at a party points to a guy and says, stay away from him, he's weird, you don't ask for a peer-reviewed study, you just stay away.
Okay, so the seed is planted. Daniel seems sketchy, but surely that's not enough to take someone down. How does this turn into a career-ending event?
So this brings us to the spread phase, and the material describes a progression that is terrifyingly efficient. One anonymous post becomes a thread.
A thread becomes a rumor.
And then the archaeology begins.
The archaeology, what does that mean?
People start digging, but they weren't digging for truth. They're digging for confirmation of that off feeling.
I see.
Someone finds an old photo of Daniel looking tired or angry. Someone else remembers a story from 10 years ago where Daniel was rude to a waiter.
And suddenly that rude comment isn't just a bad day, it's evidence of his temperament.
Exactly. Individually, these things are nothing. A bad photo, who cares? A grumpy moment, we all have them. But the key insight here is that together they are stitched into a quilt. They form a story Daniel never told.
They're constructing a new identity for him in real time, completely outside of his control.
That is terrifying, isn't it? It's like watching a deep fake of your life being assembled by strangers.
Yeah.
And this leads us to the strategic objective.
Okay.
And I want to be really clear about this because it changes how you see everything online. We assume the goal of these attacks is to prove Daniel is guilty.
Right. To prove he's a bad guy.
But the architecture of political shadows argues that isn't the primary goal at all. The goal isn't to disprove Daniel. The goal is to exhaust him.
Exhaustion as a strategy.
Think about it. Think about the cognitive load required to defend yourself against a shapeless cloud of rumors. You wake up, there are 50 new notifications. Half are bots, half are real people asking, is it true?
And this creates what the material calls the double bind. This part really stuck with me. It's a psychological trap.
It's a classic concept, actually, applied to political warfare. The enemy forces Daniel into a situation where every move is a losing move. Here's the trap. If Daniel stays silent, what happens?
Well, it looks suspicious. In the court of public opinion, no comment usually means I did it.
Right. The human brain interprets silence in these scenarios as an admission of guilt roughly 70% of the time, so he can't stay silent. But if he responds,
He looks defensive.
or rattled, worse, he validates the attack. By responding to an anonymous troll, he elevates that troll to the status of a legitimate opponent.
He's debating a ghost.
He is. So you literally cannot win. If you shut up, you're hiding something. If you speak up, you're spiraling. Which brings us to perhaps the most memorable and bleakest line in the entire text. Politics doesn't need to beat you, it just needs to wear you down.
Man, that resonates. It's not about a knockout punch. It's about 1,000 paper cuts. It's attrition.
It is. And it relies on our natural human reaction. We want to clear our names, we want to correct the record. But in this architecture, the record is irrelevant. The noise is the point.
The noise prevents you from talking about your platform, your ideas, your actual work.
Exactly. And Daniel just becomes the candidate with the drama, even if the drama is entirely manufactured.
I could just imagine the toll this takes. It's not just professional, it's like physical. You stop sleeping, you're checking your phone every 30 seconds.
It induces a state of hypervigilance. Your cortisol levels are permanently spiked. You lose the ability to think creatively or strategically because your brain is just focused on threat detection. You aren't leading anymore.
You're just surviving.
You're just surviving.
So Daniel is in the thick of this. He's tired, he's confused, people are whispering. Naturally, he reaches out for help. He talks to his peers, his mentors.
The party elders.
Right. And the advice he gets, honestly, it made me angry reading it.
It's standard operating procedure. Like, the conventional wisdom is don't respond.
Engagement validates it. Don't feed the trolls.
Just let it burn out.
We've all heard that. It sounds like the mature thing to do. Be the bigger person. So why is that wrong here?
In a normal social interaction, like if a guy yells at you on the subway, it is good advice. You walk away. But in the architecture of political shadows, where the battlefield is information, this advice is fatal.
Why?
Because, as the text explains, silence has consequences.
When you don't speak, others speak on your behalf.
That's the key. An information vacuum is created. If you do not fill that silence with your truth, the shadows will fill it with their lies. And because you aren't fighting back, the lies start to settle.
They harden. They go from rumors to common knowledge.
And then comes the social fallout. This part was heartbreaking. The material describes how people just stop calling. And it's not that they believe the rumors, right? It's not that his friends suddenly think he's a monster.
No, and that's almost worse.
It's much more pragmatic and cold than that. The text uses a phrase that I think explains 90% of modern cancellation. Proximity feels risky.
Proximity feels risky. Unpack that for me.
We have to understand that in these environments, reputation is a currency. And the insight here is that reputation is contagious.
So if Daniel's reputation is crashing, standing next to him, supporting him, it opens you up to the same attack.
Exactly. It's social contagion. If I support Daniel, the mob might turn and say, hey, why is the expert supporting this sketchy guy? Maybe the expert is sketchy too.
So it's just pure self-preservation.
It is rational cowardice. No one wants to catch a reputation that is crashing, so they distance themselves. Not out of malice, but out of fear. They wait to see which way the wind blows.
And that is how the isolation works. The text describes it as so quiet and efficient. You don't get a letter saying you've been excommunicated.
The phone just stops ringing.
The invites stop coming. You are left alone in the shadow.
And that isolation just reinforces the exhaustion. When you're alone, the noise feels louder, the doubts feel heavier. It's a perfectly designed system to make a person quit.
Most people do.
Most people do. Most Daniels step down or withdraw their nomination or just quietly resign.
But, and this is where it gets really interesting, our specific Daniel doesn't quit. Or at least he has a realization before he does. There's a turning point where the fog lifts a bit.
Yes, this is the shift from victimhood to analysis. Daniel stops panicking and starts looking at the patterns. He notices the timing is too
Right.
precise.
It's not random chaos. It happens right when he's gaining traction or right before a big announcement.
And the messaging is coordinated. It's the same buzzwords, the same specific weird adjectives appearing in different places at the same time.
So he realizes this isn't just the internet being cruel. This isn't just bad luck.
It's a tactic, and that realization changes everything. The text delivers this massive epiphany here. Attacks aren't proof of failure, they're proof of relevance.
That is such a huge reframe.
Yeah,
Attacks are proof of relevance. But does knowing that actually help? I mean, the mob is still at the door.
it helps because it changes the internal narrative. Think about it. If you were insignificant, if you were ineffective, if your ideas had no power, why would anyone spend the energy to build this shattered architecture around you?
You don't ambush a scarecrow, you ambush a soldier.
Exactly. The energy expended against Daniel is the measurement of his potential impact. The invisible enemy, whoever they are, relies on him feeling small. They rely on silence, fear, and exhaustion to keep him contained.
So Daniel flips the script. The material says he stops asking, who hates me? Which is a terrifying, endless question, and starts asking a much more empowering question.
Who is afraid of me?
I love that. It completely changes the dynamic. It goes from, I'm being bullied, to, I am a threat to the status quo.
And that is a dangerous realization for the enemy. Because once you understand that the shadows are a reaction to your light, you stop trying to dim yourself. You realize the silence they try to impose on you is actually where your power lies.
They want you silent because they're terrified of what you might say.
Yes. It reminds me of that military saying, if you're taking flak, you're over the target.
That is exactly the principle at play here. The intensity of the shadow attack is directly proportional to the threat you pose to the existing power structure. If you were useless, they'd just ignore you.
So let's trace this whole arc. It starts with those vague doubts, something feels off, which trigger our safety heuristics.
It moved to the spread of rumors, creating the story Daniel never told. Then comes the strategy of exhaustion, the double bind where defense looks like guilt.
Followed by that paralyzing isolation, where friends disappear because proximity is risky.
And finally, the epiphany, the realization that the shadow proves the target's power. It's a harrowing journey. And I want to be clear, understanding this doesn't make the attack stop, right?
Not at all. The trolls don't magically disappear because you had an epiphany.
Right, it's not a magic wand.
No,
Hmm.
but it stops the internal collapse. It allows you to endure.
The material ends on a bit of a cliffhanger, doesn't it? It says, once Daniel sees the shadow for what it is, a tool, he starts looking for the hand that holds it.
Yes. The text mentions that next, Daniel discovers the power brokers, the people who really decide who rises and who disappears.
Which suggests this isn't just random trolls. It suggests there is a structure, a hierarchy of influence that uses these tactics intentionally to gatekeep power.
It connects this digital, ephemeral bullying to the very concrete reality of power. These aren't just accidents, they are gatekeeping mechanisms designed to filter out anyone who can't be controlled.
So what does this all mean for us, for the person listening who might not be running for office, but who lives in this world?
I think it forces us to be much more critical consumers of information. When we see that vague accusation, that concern trolling, that thread tearing someone down without sources, we need to recognize the architecture
We need to catch ourselves before we engage in that social contagion.
and check our own risk aversion. When we see someone getting piled on, our instinct is to back away.
But maybe we need to be the ones who don't stop calling.
That is a crucial takeaway. If isolation is the weapon, then connection is the shield. Breaking that cycle requires courage. It requires saying, I see what is happening here, and I am not going to let this person be isolated just because it's inconvenient for me.
It's about recognizing that the risk of proximity is a manufactured fear designed to control us. If we all refuse to isolate the target, the weapon stops working.
Absolutely. The shadows only work if we are afraid of the dark.
This has been a really intense look at how modern politics and really modern society polices behavior. It's scary, but it's also empowering to know how the trick works.
Once you see the strings, the puppet show is a lot less frightening.
Before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a thought to chew on. We talked about Daniel and how he survived. But you have to wonder,
You do.
if these shadows are created to hide the hands of those afraid of change, how many promising leaders have we lost just because they were successfully worn down before we ever really heard them speak?
How many Daniels quit during that exhaustion phase, right before the epiphany? It's a sobering thought. We only see the ones who survived the gauntlet.
We never see the ones who were silenced effectively. The graveyard of potential is vast.
So next time you see a vague rumor online, a whisper campaign with no names attached, ask yourself, who benefits from this person's silence?
And who is afraid of what they might have to say?
Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Keep your eyes open out there.
Stay curious.